For 28 years, the world has stared at one frozen image. Two young boys, heads bowed, walking behind a coffin draped in a royal standard, while a nation wept around them. People watched, people wondered. But almost nobody asked the boys themselves what those days were truly like. What was said, what was felt, what was lost in the hours before everything changed. They were children then. Today they are grown men, and slowly, piece by painful piece, William and Harry have finally let the world hear what really happened. Not rumors, not headlines, their own words. And what they have shared is far more human and far more heartbreaking than anyone imagined. The story begins not with the crash, but with an ordinary summer afternoon. It was late August 1997, and the two princes were staying at Balmoral in Scotland, far from the noise of London. They were doing what brothers do, running around, playing with their cousins, laughing without a care in the world. Their mother, Diana, Princess of Wales, was far away in Paris. She called them that evening to say hello, the way she so often did. Nothing about it felt special at the time. That, the brothers would later confess, is exactly what makes the memory so unbearable. Harry has spoken openly about that phone call. He was only 12. He remembers being impatient, eager to get back to his games, so he kept the conversation short. He has said he cannot fully recall what words passed between them, and that not knowing has become a wound he carries for life. He wishes he had slowed down. He wishes he had said how much he loved her. William, 15 at the time, has admitted the same feeling, that both boys were in a rush to say goodbye and get on with their evening, never imagining there would be no next call. What the boys did not know was how much their mother had wanted to come home. Diana's close friend, the journalist Richard Kay, later revealed she had also spoken to him that same night. According to Kay, she was full of hope, eager to start a fresh chapter and longing to return to see her sons. She had no idea, and neither did they, that these were her final hours. That evening, Diana was in Paris with Dodi Fade. As the night deepened, their car sped away from waiting photographers and entered the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. In that tunnel, on the 31st of August 1997, the car crashed. Diana, Princess of Wales, was just 36 years old. Hundreds of miles away in Scotland, two boys slept peacefully, completely unaware that the one person who made them feel safest in the world was already gone. The morning came quietly, and with it came the news no child should ever have to receive. Their father, then Prince Charles, was the one who had to tell them. Harry has described the moment in his memoir with painful simplicity. He remembers his father's words landing like darts that stuck in his mind forever, gentle, broken phrases meant to soften a blow that could never truly be softened. He recalls being told that the doctors had tried, but that his mother had not survived. His father's hand rested on his knee, and he was told it would be all right. But, as Harry has said, nothing was all right for a very long time after that. What followed for Harry was a kind of disbelief that lasted years. He has admitted that as a boy he could not accept she was really gone. To protect himself from the pain, he convinced himself she had simply slipped away to start a quieter, happier life somewhere, and that one day she might return. It was a story a frightened child told himself so the world would not collapse entirely. The truth was too big, too final, for a 12-year-old to hold. William, older by 3 years, processed it differently but carried his own heavy silence. Both boys were suddenly thrust into the center of a grief that belonged to the whole world. Outside the palace gates, oceans of flowers piled up. Strangers cried in the streets for a woman they had never met. The public mourning was enormous, and somewhere inside it were two children trying to understand that the woman everyone was crying for was simply their mum. In the days that followed, the brothers leaned on each other in ways they have only spoken about much later. Harry has said that whatever happened, he did not want to face it without his older brother beside him. That instinct, to stand together no matter what, would soon be tested in the most public way imaginable, because the adults around them were already making decisions about the funeral, and one decision in particular would haunt both princes for the rest of their lives. The grief was still raw and confusing. The boys had barely begun to understand their loss when they were told what the world would now expect of them. They were princes, after all, and the eyes of the entire planet were about to turn toward them once more, this time not in celebration, but in sorrow. The funeral was set for the 6th of September 1997 at Westminster Abbey, and in the planning of it came a choice that the brothers and the man who loved them would question forever. The two boys would walk behind their mother's coffin, on foot, through the streets of London, as the world watched. Diana's brother, Earl Charles Spencer, fought hard against the idea. He has said publicly that he found it bizarre and cruel to expect two grieving children to do such a thing. According to Harry's account, his uncle objected fiercely, calling the plan barbaric and insisting the boys should not be made to walk behind their mother's coffin in front of millions. There was even a suggestion that William might walk alone, being the older one, sparing Harry. But that plan was set aside, and in the end it was decided both princes would walk. Harry has said he did not resist. As painful as it was, he did not want his brother to face that ordeal alone. He has reflected that had their roles been reversed, William would never have let him do it by himself. So the two of them walked, side by side, behind their father, their grandfather Prince Philip, and their uncle Earl Spencer. The procession stretched about a mile. To the watching world it was a solemn, dignified image. To the boys living it, it was something else entirely. Earl Spencer has described it as walking through a tunnel of grief, calling it the most horrifying stretch of time in his life, worse, he said, than delivering his sister's eulogy inside the Abbey. He has spoken about being told the boys wanted to do it, which he insists was not true. Years later, in 2017, Harry finally put his own feelings into words. He said that no child should be asked to walk behind their mother's coffin, surrounded by thousands of onlookers, with millions more watching on television. He said he did not believe such a thing would be allowed to happen today. For a long time he kept those emotions locked away. He has been honest about how shutting down his feelings for nearly 20 years took a serious toll on his life, and how it was only with the encouragement of his brother and others that he finally sought help and began to heal. Two boys, one coffin, a mile of strangers, and a silence between them that said everything words could not. That walk became the image the world never forgot. But it was also the beginning of decades in which the brothers slowly learned how to speak about the unspeakable. For years, the truth stayed buried beneath duty and silence, but the brothers were never done fighting for their mother, even long after her death. In time, they began to speak, and some of what they revealed reshaped how the world understood Diana's final years. In 2021, an independent inquiry led by Lord Dyson examined how a famous 1995 television interview with Diana had been obtained. The findings were damning. The journalist had used deception to gain access to her. William responded with a statement of cold fury. He said the methods used had fueled his mother's fear, paranoia, and isolation in her final years, and had damaged her relationships. He said the program should never be aired again, calling it a false narrative built on lies. It was one of the strongest public statements he had ever made. Harry's response was just as powerful, though different in tone. He spoke of his mother as resilient, brave, and honest, and said a wider culture of exploitation had, in his words, ultimately cost her life. He thanked those who had taken accountability, but warned that such practices had not disappeared. For both brothers, this was not about revisiting old wounds for the sake of it. It was about protecting the truth of who their mother really was. But perhaps the most tender chapter came earlier that same year. On the 1st of July 2021, on what would have been Diana's 60th birthday, William and Harry stood together once more, this time not behind a coffin, but before a statue. In the peaceful sunken garden at Kensington Palace, surrounded by thousands of flowers including forget-me-nots, her favorite, they unveiled a bronze statue of their mother. It showed her with 3 children, meant to represent the lasting impact of her work across generations. In a joint statement, The brothers said they remembered her love, her strength, and her character, the qualities that made her a force for good in the world. They said that every single day they still wished she were with them, and that they hoped the statue would forever stand as a symbol of her life and legacy. So what really happened before Diana's final night? The answer in the end is heartbreakingly ordinary. Two boys said a rushed goodbye on the phone, never dreaming it was the last. They woke to the worst news of their lives. They walked a mile they never chose to walk. And then they spent the rest of their lives learning how to carry her with them, sometimes in anger, sometimes in silence, and finally in a quiet garden full of her favorite flowers and love. They have not told us everything. Some things belong only to them. But what they have shared reminds us that behind the crowns and the cameras were simply two children who lost their mum and never stopped missing her.